Chapter 2, Nature and Description of Real Estate. As we start on our real estate journey, we must first define what is real estate. The nature and description of real estate is land and improvements in a physical sense, as well as the right to own or use them. This is also known as real property. Real estate or real property is fixed, permanent, and immobile. We need a deed to transfer ownership of real estate from one party to another. If we've defined real estate, we must also define personal property. Personal property is a right or interest in things of a temporary or movable nature. Anything not classified as real property is personal property. Hence, things like cars and furniture are known as personal property. We must use a bill of sale to transfer ownership of personal property from one party to another. We defined real estate as land, improvements, and the rights to use or own the land and improvements. So let's go a bit further and describe exactly what we mean when we say land. Land includes the surface of the earth, the sky above, and everything to the center of the earth. So land includes obviously the surface of the earth, but it also includes upward, the sky above the surface. Those are known as air rights. Air rights are upward to infinity. That upper limit is a little fuzzy. It really isn't clearly defined. But theoretically, there is no limit to air rights. Subsurface rights, something that we are very familiar with in Louisiana, oil, gas, and mineral rights obviously are below the Earth's surface. So land includes not just the surface of the Earth, but air rights and subsurface rights as well. Real estate also includes improvements, anything affixed to the land with the intent of being permanent. It is considered to be part of the land and therefore real estate. Examples include homes, buildings, fences, roads, pipelines. We have items that were under one set of conditions, personal property, but then make the jump to becoming real property. These are known as fixtures. Thus, when an object that was once personal property is attached to land or the building, the improvement on that land, it then becomes real property or real. Whether an object becomes real estate depends on whether the object was affixed or installed with the intention of permanently improving the land. Intention is evidenced by 4 tests. The manner of attachment, in other words, would removal leave the remaining property incomplete? Adaptation of the object. Was that object custom made for the property? If it is, it will have no use elsewhere. Is there an existence of an agreement? And what is the relationship of the parties? Okay. So things such as a bathroom fixture, a tub, a toilet, a sink, once they are in Lowe's or Home Depot, they're personal property. They're delivered to your home, still personal property. Once they are affixed and installed, then they would become part of the real property. There is a special class of fixtures known as a trade fixture. This is an item that is on or attached to real estate, but it's used in a trade or business. Examples of this would be maybe a bookshelf in a bookstore, a display case in a retail outlet. Those items are trade fixtures, and they, no matter of how they are attached, they are always personal property to the owner of the bookshelf or the display case, because it is used in a trade or business, and the owner of those items can take them from location to location. They are trade fixtures. There are questions of ownership, some misunderstandings between a buyer and a seller. For instance, if there is a property offered for sale and there's a TV antenna attached to it, many people are cutting the cord these days and erecting an old-fashioned TV antenna for TV programming. If the property is offered for sale with a TV antenna, certainly it is a fixture and it is part of the real estate. However, prior to it being offered for sale, the owner can certainly get rid of that antenna. He can do as he pleases. Likewise, if in my home I decide to get rid of a bathtub, I can do that as well if I have no intention of selling my home. But once the property is offered for sale, there are certain items that should not be removed. Some other questions of ownership include prior liens against fixtures. It is very common for people to finance, usually through a credit card, certain home improvements, like perhaps a new central air conditioning system. The new system, before it is installed, is personal property, and people will finance that. Once it's installed, it becomes a part of the real property, and that lender, via the credit card company, now can place a lien against the real property, because that HVAC system, that central air conditioning system, has become a part of the real property. There's also sometimes a question of ownership of plants, trees, crops. Plants are always real property. Trees are always real property. Landscaping is real property. However, crops are always personal property. We even have a special name for crops. They are called implements. Thus, sugarcane, wheat, corn, rice, etc. Those are always personal property. We can also discuss appurtenances. This is a right or privilege or improvement that belongs to and passes with the land, but is not necessarily a part of the land. Some examples of this are easements and rights of way, which in the state of Louisiana we term servitudes, condominium parking stalls, shares of stock in a mutual water company that services the land. We'll talk about appurtenances in a later chapter. Since we said earlier that real estate involves not just, or is described as not just the surface, but the area above and the area below. So obviously, water is part of the land. But who uses that water? Who gets the right to use that water? Who owns the land underneath the water? Well, that varies. First, we can talk about water rights that have to do with water flowing above the ground. The riparian right is the right to use water on or adjacent to your land. And this is above ground water. This water can either be termed navigable or non-navigable. The riparian right has to do with smaller bodies of water. So hence, these smaller bodies of water can be navigable or non-navigable. If it is navigable, the landowner can use the water as long as it doesn't harm others. If that small body of water is non-navigable, the landowner owns the land beneath the water to the center of his or her property lines. Above ground water rights that have to do with larger bodies of water are termed littoral rights. Again, these are large navigable bodies of water. And the landowner has access to the water and owns the land underneath the water only to the high water mark. What about land beneath the ground? Subsurface water. Well, we must discuss the doctrine of capture. This is part of an underground waterway. This is water that is part of an underground waterway. The party that is the first to use that water has the right to use it. All of it. However, for percolating water, this is water underground that is not part of an underground waterway. Who has the right to use it? That depends on the state. Obviously, there are some states that are more arid than others. Thus, they will have their own laws describing who has the right to use that water. Now let's talk about land or real estate descriptions. There are 6 commonly used methods of describing the location of land. There's the meets and bounds system, the rectangular survey system, recorded plat. There may also be reference to documents other than maps, informal references. That includes street addresses, and finally, assessor's parcel numbers. The first 4 methods in green are what's termed legal land descriptions. These are the most accurate forms of land descriptions. These are the only types of land descriptions that will hold up in court because they each describe and convey the uniqueness of each parcel of land. The last couple of methods are informal land descriptions. These are the 2 in red, informal references such as street addresses and assessor's parcel numbers. Well, let's take a look at each one. First, let's talk about describing land by metes and bounds. Metes, the word metes means measures, and bounds means boundaries. This is a detailed method of land description that identifies a parcel by specifying its shapes and boundaries. Thus, for this to work, the description has to have measures and boundaries. And if you look on this slide, there is a description that includes both. And if you start at what's termed the point of beginning, it describes the boundaries of this property and includes measures. For instance, it starts at that point of beginning and is 80 degrees east of south for a distance of 180 feet. Then, along the right-hand side of this parcel, it's 15 degrees west of south for 160 feet. Along the bottom, 85 degrees west of south for 151 feet. And then along the left-hand side of the parcel, it's 4 degrees, 11 minutes, and 8 seconds east of north for 199.5 feet. And then it ends again at that point of beginning. So in a metes and bounds description, we move in a clockwise direction from the point of beginning. And then it starts at the point of beginning and it ends at the point of beginning. It moves in this clockwise fashion, describing both the measures and the boundaries of that parcel. A monument can serve as a point of beginning for a metes and bounds. Another method of legally describing real estate is what's termed the rectangular or the government survey system. It will use parallels and meridians, and this is the public survey system of the United States. Now, we know about longitude and latitude from geography class in elementary school. Well, this system, this rectangular survey method, is a method of legally describing property based on imaginary lines. So between longitude and latitude, we have these parallels which run east-west and meridians that run north-south. These parallels and meridians are 24 miles apart. They then form what's called checks. These checks are 24 miles by 24 miles. Checks are then divided into 16 townships. So each check is divided into 16 townships. Each township is 6 miles by 6 miles. So this is a picture of one township. Each township is then divided into 36 sections. Each section is 1 mile by 1 mile, or 640 acres. And as a reminder, 1 acre is 43,560 square feet. So each one of these sections is about 1 mile by 1 mile. This is a much more manageable area in which we can describe properties in each 1 mile by 1 mile section. We can divide it up into halves, quarters, or each quarter of a quarter. So a much more manageable area. So we will describe where in the section, where in each township, and in each check the property is located. Our third method of legally describing property is a land description by recorded plat. A plat is just a map. It's a map that's filed in the county or parish recorder's office that shows the location and boundaries of individual parcels. This is also known as the lot and block system, very commonly used for residential subdivisions, where a subdivision developer will record with the county or parish recorder's office a map of his or her subdivision. It will include the name of the subdivision, the parish or county that it's located in, and the state it's located in. On the map, each lot will be numbered. So, for legal description of a lot in that subdivision, it will refer to the name of the subdivision, the parish that subdivision is located in, it will refer to the state it's located in, and of course the lot number in that subdivision. Now we can also reference other documents, and that will hold water as a legal land description. This means referencing another publicly recorded document that contains a full legal description, one of the other methods we previously discussed, that will contain a full legal description. Okay? Some legal descriptions are very complex and very lengthy, and it might be necessary to record that once. Any other documents referencing that parcel will then reference that originally recorded document that contains that full and complex and long legal description. So, in sum, there are 4 methods of legally describing real estate or land: the meets and bounds method, the government survey method, recorded plat, and reference to other documents. The last 2 methods of describing real estate are what's termed informal methods. One is a street address, and another informal method is using the assessor's map. And every tax assessor in a county or a parish assigns each parcel of land in their county or parish its own parcel number. That number is only useful to the assessor. So these last 2 methods, reference to the assessor's map and informal, like a street address, are not legal descriptions. They will not hold up in court. They do not convey the uniqueness of each parcel. We might also need some vertical land descriptions. In other words, we need to describe not just the surface sometimes, but we also need to describe the space above the surface and below. Since we said that's also included in the formal definition of real estate. So we need air lot and contour lands, vertical land descriptions. This will be necessary for air and subsurface rights. This will be used to supplement various legal descriptions. For instance, the purchase of a condominium, a topic that we will cover in a subsequent chapter. Purchase of a condominium means that you have purchased an air lot, and we have to be able to describe that area of air. And we can only do that with vertical land descriptions using air lot and contour lines. This chapter also includes various descriptions of the lot types, which you can see here. Note that these lots will have different values depending on their use. For instance, a corner lot might be more valuable to a commercial use than for a residential use. And let's wrap up Chapter 2 with various characteristics of land or real estate. The physical characteristics include immobility. Obviously, land is immobile. What's unique here is that the demand must go to the supply instead of the supply going to the demand. If we're talking about a good or a service, usually the supply goes to the demand. That's not true with real estate. The demand must go to the supply because it is immobile. Land is indestructible. Land goes on forever, and even the improvements such as buildings last a long time. And finally, land is non-homogeneous. Each parcel of real estate is unique, if for no other reason they sit on different parts of the Earth's surface. We can also describe land in a legal concept as being non-fungible. One parcel cannot be substituted. Land also has various economic characteristics. There are 4 economic characteristics of land generally recognized. The first one is scarcity. Is land scarce? You may be thinking about many wide open spaces here in the United States. How can land be scarce? Well, we can say that well-located land is in comparatively short supply and hence scarce. Another economic characteristic of land is modification. That means the use and value of land is influenced by improvements made by man to surrounding parcels. For instance, Walt Disney World in Florida was once just a swamp. Once Walt Disney got a hold of it and built Disney World, the use and value of property surrounding that property, surrounding Walt Disney World, has skyrocketed in value. Whole towns have cropped up around Disney World due to its presence. Another economic characteristic of land is what's called fixity. That means that land is a very high value investment. Hence, it takes long periods of time to recover that investment. And finally, the last economic characteristic of land is situs. That means that there is a preference by people to a given location. And hence, the old adage that real estate, there are 3 things important to real estate: location, location, location. Here are some terms you might want to become familiar with from Chapter 2. Should you have questions, feel free to ask.